Good morning. I'd like to introduce Dr. Dolly Weidman Scott, and this is the workshop, Developing Affordable Housing for Survivors of Relationship Violence.
Good morning, everyone. I hope that from this presentation that you will learn a lot and that you will be inspired to develop housing for survivors of relationship violence or any other um, individuals or groups in need of affordable housing. Before I dive into the meat of the presentation, I do want to talk just for a few minutes about what is relationship abuse and what are some of the barriers to leaving. So, what is relationship abuse? Most of you are probably all aware that domestic violence, also referred to as intimate partner violence, dating abuse, or relationship abuse, is a pattern of behaviors used by one partner to maintain power and control over another partner in a relationship. And what are some of the barriers to leaving? The barriers to leaving is a really, really extensive list. And what you see here is just a short list that really prevents survivors from leaving abusive relationships. The barriers include fear, isolation, children, physical harm, threats, economic necessity, immigration status, and homelessness. Today, my focus is going to be on homelessness and what we as organizations can do to really assist survivors in getting more affordable housing. So, one strategy is to develop affordable housing. Developing affordable housing is not an easy task, and it does take a long time. And it really does require many hands. One individual cannot develop affordable housing independently. We need a team, we need a village. First of all, you really have to assess your board of directors, that you need to have the conversation about this is our need. There isn't enough affordable housing in our community. And I would really like to take this on as an organization to develop affordable housing that we can control, that we can manage, that we know that we can place survivors of domestic violence and their dependent children in. So the board would have to be educated on becoming an affordable housing developer. Also, you need to look at your board and to make sure that your board does reflect the diversity of the community that you plan to have your housing located. You also need to assess their professional expertise and who they know in terms of banking, real estate, etc. You have to look at what is the capacity, what is the board's capacity to secure grants, loans, and investments. And not only the capacity of the board, but you have to look at the capacity of your staff and volunteers. What is that capacity? You have to look at the board and to see, are they champions at this moment? Do they really attend all of the board meetings? Are they engaged in the board meetings? And are they really being good stewards of the organization? Are they rolling up their sleeves and investing themselves in other projects? Are they fundraising? Are they looking for other talent, helping with volunteers, etc., is really, really important. That in order to develop affordable housing, you really need the support of the board. And initially, you may not have the support of the board, but your role would be to educate them and say, this is our vision, this is our plan, and we would like to have you on board. And I will provide you with the education so that you'll feel comfortable, that you will be the champion for this process, because we know that it is going to be a long but wonderful, beautiful process. And at the end of the day, it will help. It will help many other individuals. So, after you have the board support, you have to do a lot of planning. You need to plan, replan, plan, and plan over and over again until you are comfortable in saying this project is a go and it will work. You have to develop a needs assessment. You have to find out what is available in our community. Is there affordable housing? Are there other organizations that are providing housing for, in this case, survivors of domestic violence? And you have to make your assessment based on that. You have to look at your finances. How is your standing? What are your financial resources? Are you running at a deficit? Are you breaking even? Do you have a cushion? You have to look at those questions. Insurance, to take a look at the insurance of the organization. Are your insurance in order? Do you have the insurance that you would need to undertake this type of project? Or do you have the resources if you need to obtain more insurance to be able to do so? Do you have the capacity to fundraise? Will the board be engaged in fundraising? Will the staff be engaged in fundraising? What is your community like? Can you really get the support of community members to help with fundraising for this endeavor? You have to think about construction and sort of try to figure out, wow, how much is it going to cost to construct a affordable housing unit? How many units do we want to start with? Do we want to start with 5, 10, 20, 100? You kind of have to think about, well, what is it that I want to do, and how am I going to go about really creating affordable housing for survivors of domestic violence and their dependent children? You also have to think about long-term management. You really can't say, I'm done. I have the plan, we know where we're going, and this is going to happen, and then that's it. No, you have to look long term. I really would recommend that you really sit down and have a 10-year plan in terms of how we are going to sustain our housing project. How is it going to be managed? Is it going to be managed by the organization? Is it going to be managed by a third party? What are we going to do in terms of management? And how much is it going to cost? Again, and to recognize the risk and to have a list of what are the risks associated in terms of developing long-term housing. I just want to take you through the journey that I had the wonderful privilege and opportunity to really be involved in, to be invested in, and to let you know um, the wonderful outcome as well as the hiccups along the way. It is a long process. And I have to say that when I had the vision that the Domestic Violence Center of Chester County really needed to have its own long-term permanent housing for survivors of domestic violence and their dependent children, I had to do research, homework. I attended different seminars, and the seminars are available right now since we do have social media platforms that we can look at those platforms and to see what is available and keep educating yourself. Not only did I educate myself, but I brought along at the time my board president and my director of finance, because I know that those were two key entities in this process. And I really needed to have early on buy in. Also, throughout the process, every time I had a board meeting, I engaged the board in a discussion, a vision, and to let them know this is the need. And not only because Dolly says it's the need, but I had my facts in order. I had the data to support that affordable housing for survivors of Chester County is a great need, particularly in Chester County, that affordable housing really does not exist. And wouldn't it be wonderful if we as an organization would develop our own housing and really be able to manage that housing and give support to survivors and their children while they are living in that housing? So, one of the things that I had learned that we were looking at really making an application for low income housing tax credit dollars. I learned that that is a great way where you can get a significant amount of funding for the development of housing. However, we are not the experts in terms of submitting that application and also completing that application. It is a very, very long and tedious but necessary process. When I attended a meeting, I went to a meeting, it was in Philadelphia, about low income housing tax credit dollars. And again, my board president, my finance person, and I got them engaged and got them to come with me to this meeting in Philadelphia to learn about the multifamily housing application and process. And I said, "Oh, we can do this. We can do this." But when we uh, had attended the presentation, it was like, oh my gosh, no, we would have to go to school to learn how to complete this application. But while we were there, we were also connected with project managers who had experience in completing the application for low income housing tax credit dollars. And so with that, when I returned back to the organization, I started calling around and started to find someone who would help us in the process. And we did find an organization, again, it was in Philadelphia. We were engaged with Fairmont Ventures to help us with the housing application. Again, they had the expertise, they had the support, they also had the connections in terms of who to go to ask questions. And so they were engaged with us. And again, we had to continue to submit information about our community, what we were looking to do, and who our support system was. And all along, we continued to um, increase our support system. That our support system was really the organization and our board members, and we had volunteers on board. But we really needed to extend that a whole lot more in order to make this project a go. We also had to recruit someone who was familiar with real estate because again, our vision was to have our housing project somewhere in Chester County. And so we involved a realtor. So while they were working on the application, we were still gathering information because they needed information. When you submit the application, you have to have everything in order. You have to be really good to go. So I remember, again, visiting different properties. And one property, again, I don't know what we were thinking, but we all had our professional wear on and good shoes. And we were trekking through the mud. And I said, oh my gosh. And we were like, okay, what were we thinking? You know, we're here looking at properties and for our project and we're overdressed. So again, we all learned, okay, when you look for housing, you please don't overdress. Don't have your business attire on. Have clothes on and shoes that you can wash. So again, lesson learned. We also had to engage the community. We originally had two properties that we were really excited about building our affordable housing project. And we also learned that you have to go to the community and you have to go to the zoning boards. And also we went to the law enforcement departments. And the first two communities we were looking at, they said, I really discourage you from building your project here. And this is why. And we were, wow, another lesson learned. And so instead of trying to fight, we said, okay, let's continue looking. And so we continue looking. And lo and behold, you know, as it always is, a lot of times we look beyond where we're at, but there was property right in our backyard that was available. It was 3.2 acres, and it had one townhouse on it, and the rest of it was um, just a vacant lot. And we were like, wow, that property met a lot of the needs. It was close to the main site of the location. It was close to different amenities, hospital, schools, stores, drugstore. And it had a transportation line. Again, in Chester County, transportation is a challenge. But this property was on a transportation line. And we were like, wow, this is really, really awesome. And so we had our eyes set on that. We also had to have a market study, that it had to be beyond the homework that I did, that we did. It had to be done by someone who does market studies so we can have a bona fide market study. So we were able to recruit a company to do a market study for us and a needs assessment, and also finding the property that we wanted. we also focused on that and really did the needs assessment based on that vacant parcel. And we also had to get some funding commitments because, again, with everything you do, it's always great to get pro bono assistance, but it's unrealistic to believe that you are going to be able to get everything pro bono. You have to get some funding commitments. Again, we were really fortunate that we did receive some funding commitments. And again, our project managers, they again were connected and they let us know where we can get. And we received our first grant. It was $75,000, but it was presented as a loan for housing development for nonprofit organizations. And it was good because we needed that cushion, again, to hire the individual for the market study. The project managers, they were really in support of our project, and we had a contract with them, but they waived the payment of our fees until we were further along the way. We also had to hire an attorney because we had to get the zoning approvals. So again, when you're looking at property, you have to find property that is zoned for the type of development that you would like to build. Our vision, our original vision, was to build 10 townhomes and to have an early care and education center attached to the townhomes. Because again, our goal was to really help survivors have housing and also to support them so that they can further their dreams by attending school, getting jobs, etc. And they would have a place for their children to go to while they were really working on being successful. So that was our original plan. So with the zoning approval, our attorney had to file for the zoning approval. And again, in looking back, and this was in the early, it was probably 2001, that for the zoning approval, it was standing room only for our application. We also did do our homework and we asked individuals to come to support our project. And so, standing room only, not only did it include the community, but it also included individuals that we recruited, as well as our board, our staff, our volunteers. And when we did the presentation, unfortunately, but it's real, and we all know about reality, and we all know about not in my backyard. So we did have some opposition. We had a group of people who were saying, no, you can't have your housing project here, not in our backyard. You're going to bring crime into the community, blah, blah, blah. So at the same time, our supports, not the board of director, not me, not our staff, but our independent support people. And it was also men that stood up and said, we all know victims of domestic violence. I lived in a home where my mom was abused. So, Domestic Violence Center is only trying to support survivors that we all know who are our family members, They live next door to us right now. They go to our communities of faith. So, yes, let's say yes to Domestic Violence Center to have their project in this community. Our zoning was approved. And again, it was several people that stood up. So that was another victory, because when you also submit the application for low income housing tax credit dollars, you also have the zoning approval. And so again, we continued our work. We had to also have someone to do the environmental assessment to make sure that the property that was available was environmentally sound, that we could build our housing project. And we did find out that the property we selected, we could not have basements because there was a concern about water. So we were fine with that. And we also, with our project managers, they did our project construction cost. And they also did a 5-year pro forma and also a 10-year one. So we had all of that information in order. So we were ready to go and had all of the details and the information to submit funding through the low income housing tax credit. I also have to say that we as an organization, we submitted 2 applications, because what happened is that, again, our original project was for 10 homes, but we found out that we could really have 13 homes. And so the plan was to build 13 3-bedroom homes, 1.5 baths. And so that's why we had to go back and resubmit another application. And they said that that's kind of rare to submit 2 applications. But for the housing, the daycare was separate. The housing, we needed $3.2 million in order to build our vision project. Again, we also had to have the construction financing. And in terms of submitting the application, we had to have letters of intent. We had to know, well, who was going to help us through this process. And so we, again, were fortunate to receive home funds. And with the home funds, we were able to purchase the land. And the landowners, they were really, really supportive, because we informed them a year ahead of schedule that we wanted to buy the property. And so they held on to it for us. And so they held it for us for a whole year until we acquired the funds to buy the land for the property. We also in Chester County work very closely with our Department of Community Development, and they also awarded us with funding through the Community Development Block Grant funding. We receive funds from the Federal Home Loan Bank for affordable housing. And we also recruited 2 banks to be our limited partners. And again, in terms of the low income housing tax credit program, when they give contributions for our project, they would get tax credits for supporting our project. And so we also receive funding from the reinvestment fund, and we also receive foundation support. All of that again, it rolled up to $3.2 million, what we needed in order to really take the project from 0 to 100%. We also learned about partnership agreements that our attorney advised us to really establish a partnership and not to have our affordable housing program under the core services of the Domestic Violence Center of Chester County, that it would be a separate partnership agreement. And so at the end of the day, this is how it looked. The organization became the limited liability company. We were the general partner. In addition to that, we were also a limited partner, and our interest in the project was only 0.01% interest. And the two banks at the time, they were named First Financial and First National. They were the limited partners, and they had the rest of the percentage of the partnership. It was over 99%. And so they provided the financial resources for this project. And with that, we also learned that we were required to have a separate audit annually. The core services of Domestic Violence Center is fiscal year, July to June. For our affordable housing project, it was calendar year, January through December. And so we had two audits, and the audit was created and submitted to the Pennsylvania Housing Finance Agency. We also, on an annual basis, still are providing them with a certificate that our project is still low-income housing. And the First Financial Bank and the First National Bank, they receive annual tax credits. Again, time goes by extremely quickly. And as of December of 2021, the the two banks, again, they have different names now, they are they bought the project out. Again, they owed us less than $1 each. And now the Domestic Violence Center has full ownership of the our affordable housing project. That is certainly a victory, and one again that I have continued to be involved in the organization, able to have the privilege to lead the organization, and to see that come to a really, really major victory. And it was like, wow, this is awesome. So we are still in the process of really completing the paperwork to make sure that the Domestic Violence Center, it will begin to roll under our core services and no longer be a separate project. So we are really, really excited that all of that became a reality. And again, as you can see here, on November the 12th, 2004, we celebrated that our project is called Phase 4 Independent Housing, and it's for survivors of relationship violence, domestic violence, and their dependent children. We did build 13 three-bedroom, 1.5 housing units, and it is in a complex that sits alone by itself. What an amazing victory. And this is a photo of our housing unit. In the front, the stone building that again originally was our licensed daycare center, and our homes they swing around in a backwards L shape. And I want to pause for a minute and just to say that the daycare center was constructed in 2008 because we had to get separate funding for the daycare center. And with that, the separate funding, again, we were fortunate. We received county support as well as foundation support to construct the daycare center. And our daycare center was a licensed center for 26 children. It was extremely, extremely successful until it was not. And what began to happen is that as an organization, we are a choice organization, that we don't mandate services. We don't mandate that the families living in our housing units use our daycare center, that it was their choice if they wanted to have their children in our daycare center or not. And what began to happen is that our families, they begin to really, really thrive. They began to get amazing jobs at different locations in the community. And with that, it really made more sense for them to have their children go to daycare centers that were closer to their place of employment and or support system. So our population decreased. Because it was a licensed daycare center, we also did open it up to the community. And we had several open houses. Reality continues to be among us. The stigma was there. When individuals, even though we did not say this is a domestic violence daycare, it was called it was just called the Early Care and Educational Center. And our homes are called Garfield Commons, and it doesn't even have the name of the organization on it. But the stigma was there where individuals found out that the families living in the homes and the children that were attending the daycare were children of survivors of domestic violence. They didn't want their children to come to our daycare. So we had a dilemma. And again, still being the leader of the organization, I had to come up with another plan. And so basically what I did, before I went to my board and to tell them that we really need to bring our daycare to a close. For those of you who are aware, when you have a daycare, and ours was in operation 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., you have to have, and for 26 children, at least 2 employees every minute there. And that also was another challenge. So before I presented to my board that this has to come to a close, I had another plan. Again, I reached back to our project manager, reached back to our architect, and I said, hey, if we convert our daycare to housing, how many apartments can fit? And so they said, and also, can you let me know on a pro bono basis? And they said yes. So again, yes. It's always nice when you have support. So I was able to get them to draft a plan. And I presented it to the board. And I also went to the county too and told them of my vision. And I said, hey, I know there's a need for one bedroom apartments in Chester County. And so I have a vision to convert our daycare to one bedroom apartments. And it's my understanding that it can have 4 1 bedroom apartments and also an office for the organization in the building. And I said, will you help me get the funding for that? And they said, sure. So again, I went to my board with a plan to say, we I'm recommending we're going to have to close our daycare. However, this is going to be our continued use. We're going to continue have housing. Here's a plan. This is what we can do. The county will support us in getting the money to have the daycare converted. And also, we had to go to another zoning hearing. And so we went to the zoning hearing. The second time, it was a piece of cake. There was no opposition. It was only us there. And it was like, okay, that's good. No sense in complaining. So that also became 4 1 bedroom homes, our stone brick building. And also on the second floor, we have an office. And in the building, that building does have an elevator. This is, again, the other side of our 13 3-bedroom homes. And again, this is an actual picture of the homes. It's a backwards L. And we also do have security cameras around the perimeter of the building. And for each of the homes, we have a hold up alarm where in the event that there is a break-in or a perpetrator is trying to not be very nice, that the participants can push the hold up alarm, and the police who are aware of our community will be there within seconds. And again, they have been there within seconds when our family had to call on them for assistance. This is the interior. And again, this is a recent picture. Again, our homes opened in 2004. And now in 2021, we have had to do some upgrades. And again, in terms of upgrades, we have to continue to look for resources for upgrades. We have been able to get foundation support as well as support from the county for our upgrades. That you can see that's the kitchen. It has a dishwasher. And in each of the units, we purchased standalone microwaves. It has a laundry unit. And when we another lesson learned, when we first built our project in 2004, we had carpet throughout the unit, with the exception of the bathrooms and the kitchen. And lesson learned, and also to continue to be more healthier, we are now installing floors. So as we begin to rehab each of the units, we are installing floors throughout. So this is one of our units that have the newer flooring. And before a new family moves in, we have it turned over. Again, it's meaning turned over. We make sure that it is sparkling clean. We make sure that all the appliances are in good order. And again, that is so critical to do. And in April 2018, our former daycare center. We had all of the funding, and again, to rehab the daycare to the 4 one-bedroom apartments and an office on the second floor, that cost $800,000. Again, the cost of construction continues to soar. So we celebrate it. And that is our ribbon cutting ceremony. This is the interior of the apartments. There is a joined living room, dining room, and that's the kitchen. Have closets. And again, we knew to have floors. So we started right with our independent apartments. And so we have the floors. And so again, we are extremely proud and also proud to have housing, good, affordable, beautiful homes for survivors and their dependent children. Also, I want to tell you about something else that we continue to work on. Our housing units, they have always been affordable housing units. But what that really meant is that the individuals living in the homes, they did have a lease and they did have to pay for rent. So we continue to look at getting our homes as one that would be a project voucher home. Again, doing homework, finding out, well, what does a project voucher home mean and what does it take? So we've had many meetings with our Housing Authority of Chester County about it and our County Department of Community Development. They were all in support of it. In 2016, we completed our application, and at the time, I was informed that they could only have 7 of our homes as project vouchers. And so again, we said, okay, it's good to start somewhere than to not start at all. My vision all along was to have all 17 units project-based, and lo and behold, 2016, we received a letter that 7 of our units were going to be project vouchers, and it was going to be a project-based. However, we didn't receive the contract until April the 1st, 2020. In 2019, at our meeting with the Housing Authority, I said, I know and I appreciate the award for 7 units to be project-based. But what I really need is for all 17 of our units, the 13 3-bedroom and the 4 1-bedroom, to be contract-based. And they said, oh, okay, you're just going to have to fill out some more information in order for that to happen. And we looked at each other and were like, all right, okay, that was so easy. Remember, if you don't ask, you don't get. If you don't ask again, you don't get. Always ask. Ask away. So, as of April the 1st, 2020, all 17 of our units are project-based. What that means is that, again, for every area, you can only have lease payments according to the low income rate for the area. So we as an organization, for our housing assistance payments, we receive a total of $1,300 a month for each of the 13 bedrooms and $1,100 for the 4 one-bedroom. What happens is that each of the tenants, in our case, each of the survivors, they provide domestic violence center and the housing authority all of their financial information. And the housing authority informs them how much money they have to pay directly to the organization and how much they will support their monthly rent. Right now, the lowest amount that one of our tenants pays is $50 a month, and the housing authority pays us the balance of the monthly cost. Some pay more, some pay 200, some pay 400. Again, it depends on their income and family size, how much the subsidy will be for the housing assistance payments. And it is really, really so awesome to have that in place. Again, our units were constructed in 2004, and it took all of this time in order for us to receive the project based award. And we signed a contract for 20 years. Again, I hope that the contract will continue to be valid and will hold up for 20 years. But right now, we have a contract with the housing authority that they will continue to pay us, and we will continue to be project based. Again, we have to do all of the work that we need to do for 20 years. How awesome is that? For 20 years. I also want to shift just a little bit and for to talk about our other housing, our first housing. That the organization, we have communal living, that we have 3 interconnected buildings, and in that building we have our emergency shelter, and we also have what we call a bridge transitional housing program in our administrative offices. And we, again, we have provided housing ever since 1980 as an organization. And before the development of our independent housing units, this is the housing structure that we had for survivors, which has worked extremely well. Between the emergency shelter and bridge transitional housing, we could house 50 individuals on a daily basis. What that really translates to is 10 to 14 families on any given day. Again, the largest population is children. What I've learned in the pandemic, and I have to say that I had a moment of sadness, that while I was really, really excited and pleased with the progress and investment of the organization in terms of housing for survivors and children, I was sad when the pandemic hit us. And that I learned that, wow, our communal buildings are really unsafe for families. We were fortunate, we received funding from different sources to also house individuals in hotels. And so we never closed. We continued to be open throughout the pandemic, but we limited our census in our communal buildings. And we did that to be in compliance and to do our best in terms of keeping our families as healthy as we can. We also did a lot of modifications. We have air purifiers, and we've done all of the things that we could do to make our building healthy for all. So because I was really, really bothered and still bothered by that, I began to put it out in the atmosphere about my vision. I said, you know what? And I went to the board, and for me, I kind of think that they always say, "Oh, here she goes again." I said, we we really need to think about either moving, but since we own the property, since it's in a perfect location, we can also, look into how can we convert our communal living units to efficiency units for families. And they were like, okay. So again, went back to the county and I said, this is my vision. And can you help me again? Can you help me get the funding if we were to do this? And they said, yeah. And they said, in fact, we know that there is a movement where individuals who have communal living settings are really being encouraged to think about maybe converting them or moving somewhere else, which is not easy, which is not affordable for many. So as I put my vision out there, an individual who heard about my vision said, I know a university that could probably take on your project and do the feasibility study for you. And so she connected me with that individual, and we have been meeting. And just a couple weeks ago, the university said yes. So now I have the university behind us, who has an architectural um, education center. So we have the professor again, who her background is in architect and building affordable housing. So, and she has 22 graduate students that are going to help us develop our feasibility study to see, can we can we convert our two communal, our emergency shelter and bridge transitional housing units to efficiency units for families. I am so excited that we're going to have this plan within a year. And then we're going to have to assess our next steps in terms of the plan. Again, have to have the vision, have to ask, have to do your homework. There is a question. And so, Tracy, can you put the question up?
Yes, I just enabled the poll. So you can click on that module and vote now.
Thank you, Tracy. The poll question, as you can see, what is the average length of time for a nonprofit organization to develop affordable housing? Tracy, are the responses available?
So So far, we have 44% at 2 to 3 years, about 34% at 4 to 5, and then more than 5 years, we have about at 22%.
Okay, great responses. I would say it really does take 2 to 3 years. However, it can take longer because depending on your community, there can be a lot of roadblocks, barriers, setbacks. You can have a change in leadership. A lot of things, as we all are familiar with, can happen. And then you might have to start and stop and begin again. Really important to know that it does take that length of time. I would say up to 3 years. It did take the Domestic Violence Center 3 years from start to the completion in terms of getting our independent housing unit of 13 3-bedroom units built. For our conversion for the apartments, from the getting the funding to building, that did take 2 years. Sometimes it takes a year or more to really have the funding in place and have the funding commitments in place. Again, when you get funding commitments, you need to make sure you get them in writing. That because someone says, yes, I will give you X amount of dollars, say, great, and can you provide me that in writing? Because you need that when you are looking for resources to build your housing project. Really important to do. I do have to say that in terms of planning long term, in terms of maintaining the buildings, again, you really need to know what your structure is. Who is going to maintain the buildings? In the earlier years, staff took on that project, and the staff, it really included myself, an administrative staff, and one of our counselor advocates, that and we were responsible for responding to any calls from the families in the homes, and seeing what their needs are, and then finding vendors to complete the work, etc. We also have been extremely fortunate to have a wonderful, amazing group of volunteers. And in the earlier years, they would come in, they would paint. I mean, it was really awesome. We still have the support of volunteers. And again, we have so many goodwill individuals. And it's just been really amazing to have so many goodwill individuals to help in your project. And throughout, as long as the organization is responsible for the affordable housing units, you do need volunteers, you need staff, you need board, you need the community, you need everyone. I also want to say that, again, in our community, many wonderful things continue to happen. And I can just go on and on and on, as you can imagine. But our law enforcement in the area every year. And again, they connect with us and we connect with the families to make sure that they're okay with it. And they can also say no. But one of the officers dressed up as Santa. And he goes to every home and drops off gifts for the children. Again, this is our law enforcement in the area where the housing units are located. Isn't that such amazing support that we always get? We have other community individuals that always check in with us and say, do your families need groceries? What are their needs? And they come and coordinate with us so that we can ensure that the needs of our families continue to be met. The needs of the children continue to be met. It is really, really important and so critical. Tracy, we can begin with questions. And do we have questions?
We do, Dr. Wyman Scott. We've had some questions entered into the Q&A. The first one is from Rachel Hoker. She's with Women's Resource of Monroe County, Inc. Her question is, are you a part of a COC and coordinated entry? And if so, then do you put into your housing, those you put into your housing units need to be pulled from the by list name, or by name list, I'm sorry.
Hi, Rachel. And that's a really good question. Yes, the Domestic Violence Center, we are a part of the our county COC. However, we have always been able to get the exception. And I always ask for the exception because, again, with survivors of domestic violence, we are treated in a special category. And so we do not become a part of that list because we continue to get that exception. But great question. Next question, Tracy.
I'm sorry, the first question actually came from Adrian Hoker. This question is from Rachel Fevier. She is with the Domestic Violence Services CAP. Do all tenants of Garfield Commons come through your emergency shelter or transitional housing program? How do you select your tenants?
We the quick answer is that no, they do not necessarily come through. We do accept referrals from the community for individuals who are survivors. We are also on the list. I can't remember the name of the list, but I get the I receive information from individuals looking for housing in the county. And so we do get names from that list, the public list. Again, it doesn't say Domestic Violence Center, it says Garfield Commons. And so they do not have to come from our internal programs, that they can come from the community at large. And we do have a housing committee, and we review applications and rank order them. And thank you. I guess that was Rachel, and the first person was Adrian. Thank you both.
Yes, I'm sorry. I apologize for that. And then we have one last question. This was actually a question that came from me. I just was wondering, you mentioned about your 13 3-bedroom and then your 4 1-bedroom apartments. How long do the families, on an average, stay in the townhomes or apartments?
Tracy, that was a very good question. I talked about zoning, and with zoning, we as an organization and with the advice of our attorney, we accepted what the township would give us in terms of the zoning. What our original zoning was is that they say they gave us the approval to build our house in units. However, they said that they did not want our families to live there more than 5 consecutive years. Isn't that interesting? And it was like, what? And so we were like, why do they want to have control over what we do as an organization? They never had control. And our attorney said, take what you can get. So the township says that individuals can only live there for 5 years. And for the most part, we've really honored that. And there has been a couple occasions where families really needed more time. And so basically what I did was I wrote to the township and said that in being in compliance with what the township said, even though it's not on our ordinance, but being respectful, and because I know, um, I said we need to have these families stay here longer. I never got a response, and so we just let them stay longer. And I was like, okay, I did my part. I was in compliance, respectful, let them know, and continue to house the family until they were ready to leave. Um, but yeah, really great question. Because we have a few more minutes, I do also want to add that in the beginning, I talked about when we bought the vacant parcel that there was an end townhouse on the property. And in that townhouse, there was a family living there. And that family, we continued to have them rent that property, and we had a separate company be responsible for that because again, that was outside of the scope of our mission. And that family continued to live there until January of 2021, where they moved out. And again, that now has opened up the door. We have rehab that house. It is a 2 bedroom house. And now we have 18 independent units for survivors. So we have the 13 3 bedroom, 4 1 bedroom, and now 1 2 bedroom home. And so again, we're really, really excited. I'm working with the housing authority to see if that home can also be a part of our project based. I know it's going to take a long time, but when the family moves in, again, their rent is also going to be affordable for them. Also, in terms of the project-based housing, the beauty of it is that when a family decides that they want to move out, as long as they are in good standing and with the approval of the housing authority, that if they move out, they can leave with their own independent voucher in hand. And I can attest to the fact that that can happen because we recently had a family to move out. She did the paperwork. We verified she was in good standing. She has her voucher in hand, and I believe she found another place for her family to move somewhere else in the community. So that is also the beauty of having a project-based voucher, that individuals can also leave with a voucher in hand, providing that they are in compliance with all of the guidelines. um, Tracy, has any more questions come in?
There are no other questions, but I did want to just comment that under the session chat Dr. Weidman's got, there were quite a few really nice comments. Again, from Rachel, she commented that this was a beautiful partnership with law enforcement and the community. And now she just added one, good forward thinking to further support the families beyond your program and services. So there were some really nice comments in the chat while you were presenting.
And again, I thank everyone for your interest. And again, if you are considering to have your organization really consider developing housing, it can be for any population that your organization desires. It is possible that the funding sources that I mentioned, they're still available. In fact, I believe that there is even more funding available for affordable housing programs. It is a huge investment of time. It requires a lot of engagement and many, many partners. But at the end of the day, you will be so excited and so amazed in terms of the number of people that you are supporting and providing housing, providing services, and really helping them to really implement their vision, encourage them to keep going, support them when they think that the doors have closed. Just keep believing that this is possible and that you can definitely make this a reality. No, it's not easy, but you can do it. I know you can do it. We are just like you, and we were able to manage, do it, grow it. So thank you all very much.
Dr. Wyman, there is one more question. Again, it's Adrienne Hoker. She did have a question. Are there any guidelines that the tenants need to abide by, such as counseling from DVCCC or budget case management?
Another great question. We are a choice-based organization. We offer those services, but the individuals are not mandated to participate in any of the services. Again, that question kind of reminded me of the beauty of the community. Right now, the community, they themselves, they have two of the adults that live in the community. have continued to show their leadership, that they come to us and say, can we have a block party? Can we do this? Um, and we say yes. In the summertime, we were able to get funding so that an ice cream truck came on the property, and there was free ice cream for everyone for a couple of hours with their block party. And again, our community sits alone. And in front of it is a storage unit that was built after we built our property, which actually was a good thing because it really blocked us off more from the public at large. And it's just been really, really amazing. And that when families move out, we have families that move out to be homeowners. When they move out, they throw a party. They check in with us and say, so and so is moving out. She's getting her own house. Can we have a party? And we say yes, and we come. We find out what the family needs in their new home. So again, emerging leaders continue to surface, and they continue to build the community themselves. And it is really, really so awesome to be a witness to that happening. Really awesome.
So if there are no other questions, and I think we are wrapping up here with our chat, I do want to just thank Dr. Dolly Weidman-Scott, and I will be actually ending this broadcast. And for the rest of the attendees, we still have the Pathfinders Awards that I believe start at 1 o'clock, and that will be the end of our Pathways Conference. So thank you again for attending, and I appreciate all your questions and comments. Thank you so much, Dr. Wyman Scott.
My pleasure. Thank you.